start.
All right, it is the Fantasy Finish Line podcast on drink5.com. Tonight is Wednesday, October 13th, 2021, and we're going to talk about the NFL in Week 6. It's the injury apocalypse.
All right.
Cheers.
Drink 5, folks. Hoo-ah. So as Jason said, I am Dave. This is Jason. We are here to bring you fantasy football analysis and a little bit of laughter, hopefully, a lot of drinks occasionally, and tonight we have a whole bunch to offer.
A lot of injuries, definitely.
Why don't we get into some of that, Jason?
All right. So just to get the specifics out of the way, remember, please subscribe to us on YouTube and follow us on Twitter. We're Drink 5 in both places. We're Drink 5 anywhere you find us. I don't think anybody has tried to steal our name yet, so that's a positive thing.
That's right.
Wherever you get the podcast, review us if you can. Give a thumbs up or whatever the hell it might be. Just do all the things that help us, help you, help your team. And so, without further ado, we're going to talk about what's happening around the NFL this week. So, Dave, you want to take it away with the man who's been taken away from us?
Taken away from us?
I say that in jest, of course. I could care less if he was still here or not.
Okay, well,
good riddance for the most part.
Let's talk about some things that are happening. So John Gruden, obviously gone, resigning after these leaked emails surfaced. Not only was it one email that everyone that in the NFL community saw, and everyone in the public too, after it was leaked, and then it was more like distributed to the public than leaked, right? It was carried over on the wings of some lawyer angels. But I do think that there are serious issues with what John said. Now, if you look back, and I don't want to make this a debate in any way, but if you look back at what you think of as...
What you're saying is that you're pro John Gruden's emails?
No, incorrect. Incorrect. But when you look back at things that that we're familiar with in like the 90s, 2000s, etc., clearly you can understand some of this terminology because I've heard it from coaches in athletic endeavors that I was involved with in high school, etc., right?
Sure.
But that doesn't make it okay. And not only was it the one email that came out, but multiple after that made it clear that Gruden is a tremendous asshole.
Yeah, I think there's a big difference between a coach calling you names, trying to get you to run harder in practice, and a coach who sits down in front of his laptop and fires off a bunch of email full of those words.
Sure. So regardless of what we think about any of this, and rest assured that I think Jason and I both believe that John Gruden was way out of bounds here. The fantasy impact is what we're interested in. So when John Gruden leaves, how does that leave the Raiders? Does that create a fantasy impact on them? I know in the past we've talked about coaches leaving, and when coaches leave, there's generally a positive impact on fantasy production, at least in the short term. But that's when coaches are not...
teams are usually underperforming at that time.
Yeah, that's when coaches have not been doing well. And so the Raiders have actually had some positive games. Being that they're doing okay this year and have had some good offensive production, do you think it will impact them negatively to have a coach like this leave and have the whole like all the things surrounding it occurring to them?
Yes. In general, I think that their performance will suffer just because it's a huge distraction. Now, they are going to continue with pretty much the rest of the coaching staff intact, I would assume. I can't imagine that they're going to change the whole regime in the middle of the year.
Right.
So once they put this behind them, I think they'll be a little bit better. As we saw last week, they were lackluster at best. They lost to a bad Bears team. I don't think that for right now the Raiders are going to rebound quickly. I think that they had some impressive victories against some good teams, but it's not. I don't know. There aren't many coaches that are removed like this throughout the season, so we don't have a whole lot of examples
when you
like fall back on to say, well, this team, did this.
When you see scandal in any way that it comes out there, it should probably impact them negatively, at least for the short term. You would think that they are going to be asked a million questions, drawn into a bunch of press conferences, constantly bombarded on social channels with questions from reporters, from people all about Jon Gruden. So they're probably a little tired of all the things that have been occurring over the past week. I agree with you. I think that we may see a negative impact, at least in the short term. But what a lot of people said about Gruden, too, was that is that he was a very loud coach, but he might not be a very good coach.
Knock on wood if you're with me.
So I think in the long term, it may not affect them that much. I do know that Gruden has come out in some articles, and we knew kind of before, about 51% control of the organization, which means control of the roster. And now it's gone flipped back to the coach will probably not have that, and it will be going to the GM or the owner.
So the Raiders GM is Mike Mayock,
that
formerly of the NFL Network.
So that may have something to do with what occurs with them.
So I don't look. They have a lot of talent on this team. Derek Carr has shown that he can play a good quarterback. People were like, through 3 games, people were like, "Oh wow, is Derek Carr actually going to be an MVP candidate this year?" They've got a lot of talent on the offensive side of the ball. I definitely think that this team can turn it around once they get this behind them. It's a question of how quickly they're able to do that.
Yeah, maybe next year.
Yeah, it's certainly not going to be this week. Maybe not even next week. Maybe after the bye week, when they can really implement some of the things that the other coaches want to do, rather than just keep running the things that Jon Gruden had implemented.
But it may be a good idea to fade the Raiders a little bit here in the next couple weeks, when you're talking about short term.
Sure. So they play the Broncos this week, Eagles, and then it looks like they have a bye. And then they come back, play the Giants, the Chiefs.
Raiders versus Raiders.
Bengals, Cowboys. Well, right now it's Raiders versus Raiders.
Mirror universe.
It's all about, not beating yourself.
Let's move on to a tweet by Field Yates. He says, it's week 6, and the Jaguars have not yet made a field goal this season. They are 0-4-5.
That's crazy. I can't believe I didn't realize that. And I would have totally written about that in my column.
Yeah, Jason's column, what's it called again?
Statistically insignificant.
Right. And so that is a perfect opportunity for you to use that, I think. Perhaps maybe this upcoming week, if they
continue to miss.
If they still keep missing field goals. And so they're the first team in the Super Bowl era to not make a single field goal in the first 5 games of the season.
That's crazy.
And who did it used to be that was on the Jaguars?
And one of the misses, wasn't it at the end of the game with Arizona, where they it was like a 50 or like a 67-yard attempt, and it got run back for a touchdown.
Yeah. I mean that's hard for anybody to make a 67-yard attempt unless their name is Justin Tucker.
Yeah.
Breaking all the rules. I don't even know why they tried a 67-yard attempt. That doesn't make sense.
The time was expired at the end of the half. So that's really all they had. It was that or a Hail Mary.
Well, one of those things maybe not resulting in a run back for a touchdown. I don't know.
Well, they both can result in a, run back for the touchdown.
But this year in general, I have seen a couple of weeks where there's been a lot of missed extra points, a lot of
there was like 11 of them missed.
A lot of kicking issues, and we see that occasionally. One of the things that we always bring up in the show, right, is that there are these things that you think are surprising, but yet they occur every single year.
Yes, it reminds me of baseball. Whenever announcers like to wax poetical about baseball, they always say "Oh, baseball is so great because no matter how long you've watched the game, every night when you watch a game, you see something new." Well, I feel like that happens in football too. I feel like any sport, if you're watching closely enough, you will see something new all the time. And it's not that it's always very different. It rhymes, to steal from Mark Twain. It doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. And it looks similar to things you've seen, but it's a little different. Like, I've never seen a game where they missed 5 field goals in a row with less than 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter. No. But that just happened. But there's been plenty of games where nobody can make a damn kick.
He's getting some flaming shit delivered to his door. But he won the game.
He won the game.
Yeah, but he missed so many times that there's going to be conversations among all their fans. We're talking about the Green Bay Packers.
About Mason Crosby?
About finally getting him off the squad. You know, Crosby has lost games for them before.
That's true.
And I'm sure this isn't putting him up higher in the spotlight as far as people that
it's
are...
not helping.
Yeah. So anyway, that's an interesting conversation. The last thing is starting Wednesday, November 17th, there's going to be a new Hard Knocks mid-season series. They've never done that before. That will try to capture the Indianapolis Colts' struggles to make the playoffs in the AFC South.
Keyword struggles. With
their new coach, Frank Reich. Now, I understand struggles, but I mean, their opponents, besides the Tennessee Titans, are the Houston Texans and the Jacksonville Jaguars. So it shouldn't be too difficult for them to get themselves into second place. They are a team that's more talented than the other two. The question that I have is, will the filming of this new series affect the team positively or negatively? And I know that one of the things that you might bring up is the series that occurred before. Was it on Amazon?
All or Nothing is what it was called, yeah.
Yeah. So is there any kind of impact that you think filming a mid-season program during the NFL season itself, as opposed to Hard Knocks, which is in the beginning of it, that it could have to the team itself?
So I think that the teams are pretty used to having media around, to having cameras in their face all the time. Having, like, someone literally follow you around is going to be a little different. You know, it'll be Jonathan Taylor. It'll be probably T.Y. Hilton. Like, the bigger names will get the ones following them. Carson Wentz for sure. So, you know, the question is, like, when they air it, is there going to be a perception that other teams are able to use that against them?
Mm-hmm.
Because that seems to be the reason why we've never seen an in-season thing like this. Hard Knocks has traditionally been only during the preseason, which means that you see how the roster is put together, which is fine. What you're seeing mostly is talent evaluation and not game planning. What you see during All or Nothing is actually a lot of the nuts and bolts and how you run the team and how you approach each game. However, that isn't released until months after the season is over. So I am interested to see how this is. I have to imagine that they would not agree to this without some sort of final editorial say. So it's unlikely, in my opinion, to be very interesting to someone who already knows a lot about football. I think it's meant for the casual football fan to try and draw them in a little bit more. And why they picked the Indianapolis Colts, I have no idea. There is not much interesting about that team. Perhaps it's the only team they could get to agree to this.
They can always find some things that are interesting about any team like that, because they're like little mini companies.
Look, every football team is terribly interesting to you or I.
Yeah.
But they're not likely to show many of those interesting things on camera. You know, they're not going to tell us who they plan on playing more, Nyheim Hines or Marlon Mack. You know, those aren't the kind of things that we're going to learn from Hard Knocks, I don't think. You know, that's the kind of stuff that we would love to know. Or at least know their thinking behind how they did it, on Sunday. So I will definitely watch it because it's Hard Knocks, and I am hopeless to the dulcet tones of Liev Schreiber.
There you go.
So I will watch it for the narrator alone.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, let's talk a little bit about Drink5.com. I want to let everyone know that you're either listening to this as a podcast, or you're watching it live on YouTube, or you're watching it on demand, or you're watching it through many different channels that distribute those videos and podcasts. What we'd love for you to do is write a quick review or rate the podcast wherever you're listening to it, or if you're on YouTube,
I'm gonna give it a thumbs up.
If you're on YouTube right now, please subscribe to our channel so that we can get some more viewers and possibly sponsors and grow this thing. We would really appreciate it. Jason and I would definitely give you a thumbs up for that.
Yeah.
So,
make us big enough so we can buy you all a beer.
Well, that would be a fun thing to do. Yeah. I'm behind it. And we never really did the "What are you drinking?" segment. So maybe
that's a good point. We kind of skipped over that.
Maybe we can move into that before we get to the injury apocalypse.
So what we will be drinking is the Imperial Hickster, an Imperial Blonde Milk Stout from Scorched Earth. It's even got a quasi stormtrooper helmet on a dude with a giant beard and like some corn in the background.
I gotta say that
behind like this strange urban camo. So
the art for
very good work there.
The art for beers over the past 5 years has gotten huge. I think that as I know a lot of people that are designers that work in the art world in general. I don't think that beers were a very big topic of discussion for employment or design contracts 10 years ago. But now beer is something you could go into. You could be a beer cover art designer as like your job.
Yeah,
and that's
absolutely
that's amazing.
Yeah, the only marketing jobs aren't coming up with Miller Lite ad campaigns anymore.
Yeah, pretty cool.
And then we have already cracked open a Pollyanna Fun Size, which has a real clever little poem, if you will, on the side.
You are not you when you're thirsty, so satisfy that craving with this fun-sized treat. I don't know if that's a poem.
It's not a poem,
but it's
a rip-off slogan or an homage. The beer tastes like a certain candy bar that
you can say it. We're not under any specific.
Okay.
You talking about Snickers?
I am indeed. It has a striking similarity to a Snickers bar as you drink it. So, did you mix that with wine again?
No, I just drank all the wine.
Okay. It just seemed rather full. And then, what's that last beer that we're going to open over there? I know it's one we had on the show last week, but it's good enough to give it another shout out.
Needles Hazy Eye New England Style IPA from So Hop Brewery in Huntley. So there are 3 beers that we are going to dive into.
Perhaps a little Four Roses as well.
Yeah, shout out to the 3 beers that we're going to be drinking.
Shout out to the 3 beards that we'll be seeing this weekend.
All right.
If you live in Chicago, look them up.
So let's take a little drink break and then move into our injury apocalypse.
Cheers.
Growing inside infinity of island universes, allowing all causality to dream.
I love Jason playing these tunes that I wrote. He's like, I've never heard them this many times, even when I was mixing the song.
Oh, really? Now you get to listen to them once a week.
At this point, I'm like, I got to write some new stuff, man.
Yeah, I mean, I want to have a variety to choose from, to craft an individual show.
That's right.
I don't want to just be like, man, they're great tunes. I like playing them.
Well, we'll get there.
It's certainly like a way better alternative to the royalty-free music that we were choosing from earlier.
Well, here we go. So, Injury Apocalypse 2021, is that the plan?
Yeah, and it's definitely not royalty-free, but we can quote it with our own voices. And go, bring out your dead! And just pretend that, like, Monty Python's in the background. So, it's been one of the worst weeks in recent memory for NFL injuries. And please don't go counting them and saying, well, actually, week 4 last year, I don't care. So, we're going to have a not-so-quick roundup of all of the fantasy-relevant guys who we need to keep an eye on going into week 6.
Yeah.
If we go too fast, if you lose your spot, if you want to go back and review, go to our website. All of these are posted as the week 6 injury apocalypse. Dave is in the process of making it look a little more snazzy and stuff, and I really like the front page changes that you've made so far.
Yeah, we're getting there.
And so what we've got here...
soon we'll be bought by NBC, who knows?
Fine with me. You call me a sellout, I don't care. That means I made money.
Well, nobody wants to sell out until they see the check.
Yes. And then where do I sign? So, to begin this injury apocalypse 2021, we've got Russell Wilson. He injured his middle finger. This one, right?
Did you see the game?
Yeah.
So it was quite interesting because when he came off the field, it looked like it was a horrible injury. He was holding it and kind of like exclaiming in pain. And then it felt like he was going to come back in. But then, like a little bit afterwards, he was trying to grab a hold of like a tennis ball, and he was unable to.
Ooh.
So clearly, it was
you can't
way
hold
bigger.
A football if you can't
Yeah, way bigger injury.
So, yeah, it seemed like at first it was a dislocation. So, he has a torn tendon as well as a fracture/dislocation of his middle finger. I suppose all three things can be true at the same time. His middle finger on his throwing hand. This one. Anyways. He had surgery to repair it. He's expected to be out until week 10 at the earliest. It is said that he is a fast healer. I don't know what that means.
It is said.
Does he have like special stones or rocks or minerals?
An injury hath befallen Russell Wilson.
Yes.
It is said that he is a quick healer.
Like extra prayers to heal? I don't know what that means. Let's assume that Seattle has a bye week in week 9. We don't need to assume that. That's a fact. Let's assume that he doesn't come back until after that at the very least.
Yeah.
So, in relief, Geno Smith immediately led the Seahawks on a 98-yard scoring drive. That was very encouraging. Threw a second touchdown in the he threw one touchdown, but it was DK Metcalf's second of the game. So the Seahawks fantasy players that you would normally start, I think, remain startable. Right now, you've got whoever the starting running back will be. That's either going to be Alex Collins or Chris Carson. We'll talk about that in a minute because we have so many teams with multiple players. Mm-hmm. And then you've got the two receivers, Locket and Metcalf. I think they're both startable. I think you need to move them down a little bit. Where have they wound up? Do you know where they are compared to like last week on your list, Dave? Have you downgraded them a little bit, or are they kind of in the same place?
Well, I don't have a comparison between where they were last week and where they are this week.
That's fair because with different opponents, it's gonna be different anyways.
What I can tell you is that looking up the Seattle players, I currently have.
So DK is at 12. And Tyler Lockett is at 24. They're playing Pittsburgh, who I don't think is particularly good or bad against the pass. I think they're kind of average.
They could upgrade their secondary in some cases, but they haven't been horrible. The problem has been a couple of teams that have just taken advantage of them.
third in points against wide receivers. So these guys are definitely still startable for this week is what I'm saying, even with Geno Smith at quarterback.
Well, remember that there were a lot of injuries on Pittsburgh, and they started to look better last week.
They certainly did.
But I will totally agree with you that that they're both startable. However, we have to remember that the quarterback's name is Geno Smith. Do you remember Geno Smith?
I do.
The fact that he did well for a quarter and a half or whatever he was in for doesn't really have any bearing on how he will do going forward as a replacement starting quarterback. And I don't think that Seattle is going to have a very good time with this guy under center.
I agree with you that last week's performance, especially when you first come in, like you're generally taking everyone by surprise, and you're able to have success that way. And anybody playing in the NFL should be able to take advantage of a situation like that.
But it's not the Jets, so he's in a better situation.
But they definitely both got a downgrade. So last week, you had Metcalf against the Rams at 7 and Lockett at 11. So now they're 12 and 24. That's a hit, as we said, but still well within the startable range.
Yep.
All right. More quarterbacks injured. Daniel Jones, he suffered a concussion. He was visibly dazed and stumbling on the field after the play. He was carted off the field. One of our friends, Matt Cochran, who writes the Survivor article, commented that he's never seen a player carted off the field for concussion before. So Mike Glennon wound up finishing the game. He had enough passing action to encourage me, at least, to recommend starting Cadarius Tony and possibly Sterling Shepard if he returns. It sounds like Darius Slayton may possibly return as well. That does get a little muddy. However, if it's Jones, he's thrown the ball so much to Tony lately, I would stick with him for another week. So Daniel Jones did not practice today, but according to Joe Judge, he is, quote, on track with everything, whatever that means, because the concussion protocol is very cut and dry. You have to pass certain tests. I don't know that there's any sort of milestones that you worry about along the way. Mm-hmm. So if he does return, I would bump Tony and Booker and Shepard back up a little bit. They seem like the most relevant fantasy starters for the Giants. If Darius Slayton plays in addition to Sterling Shepard, I would probably choose to start Shepard instead of Slayton, were that a decision to make, just because it seems like Tony's going to be taking a lot of that action.
Yeah, let's just bust through these guys. There's so many of them, you know.
We do have too many. Trey Lance, he suffered a knee sprain. So far, his timeline's murky. The 49ers do have a bye week this week, so they're not required to give us any updates at the moment. Jimmy G could end up returning because Lance was not very good as a passer. So, situation's clear as mud. You got to pay attention to what's going on next week with their practices to figure out what's going on in week 7. So, no answers right now on the 49ers, unfortunately, but it's their bye. You couldn't start them this week anyways. Tom Brady hurt his thumb, I believe, on his throwing hand, and he plays tomorrow night. So, all reports indicate that he will play. He is not 100%, but that offense is playing very well. Tom Brady, not at 100%, is going to be just fine for fantasy production. Do you have a problem with starting your guys with Tom Brady having a thumb injury?
I'm worried in general about any quarterback that has problems with his throwing hand. But if Tom Brady says that he's okay, then I'm pretty sure that after the years that he's been in the league, it means that he can throw the ball to Antonio Brown, Chris Godwin, or Mike Evans just fine.
Well put.
Yeah, I mean, he may not be trying to dish it deep down the field, but I mean, what last game he scored like 5 touchdowns, 400 yards.
Yeah.
Ridiculous numbers.
I mean, the thumb is not the finger you use to drive the ball. It's generally like the forefinger or the middle finger. So we need like a ball. There needs to be another accessory on the table as part of the decor.
All right.
But, you know, obviously the thumb is important. We're all apes with opposable thumbs. That's what separates us. So Saquon Barkley is injured as well. He sprained his ankle. It swelled up pretty quickly, and it was on display for you on television. Everybody sort of reeled at it. I normally reel at all those injuries as well, but for some reason a swollen ankle I just had a swollen ankle a few months ago, so I was just like, yeah, that's what it looks like.
Yeah, clearly he's gone for a little while here.
You think so?
Mm-hmm.
So they haven't really put a timetable on his return yet. They have not ruled him out for week 6. A lot of guys have already been ruled out for week 6, not Saquon Barkley. However, I assume he will be out for week 6. You're going to be looking at Devonte Parker. He scored 2 touchdowns when he came in for Saquon last week. This week, do you know who the Giants play? Week 6 schedule.
Not offhand.
So this week the Giants are going to be playing the Rams. So not a great matchup. Very tough matchup. The game will be played in New York. It's a West Coast team going to the East Coast and playing at noon. So that's about the only edge that you can see for the Giants right now, especially if they're not going to have Daniel Jones.
Okay.
Damian Harris of the Patriots exited Sunday's game twice with a chest injury. He also fumbled on the goal line, but was still given carries late in the game, which means that Bill Belichick either trusts him with his, firstborn son, or, it's not as relevant now that his firstborn son has become a stupid meme.
Who likes Damian Harris? My people in the chat room, give me a heads up if you like any New England Patriots running backs. Go ahead.
And so it sounds like he has avoided any serious injury. He is day-to-day. He did not practice today, Wednesday. As always, we say, guys are always given veteran days off on Wednesdays. Keep an eye on when they practice, especially Thursday, Friday. If they practice in the week, generally they'll play, but not always. If they don't practice, almost nobody plays, with very few exceptions. So we're going to assume at the moment that Damian Harris will probably be fine to go on Sunday. They're playing the Cowboys. There's going to be a lot of points in this game, so I like him as an RB2/flex option if he plays. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he was put on the IR already. He has a sprained MCL. That means he's out for at least 3 weeks. You've got Daryl Williams. He's going to be the main running back, getting pretty much all the work is how I see it, because Jerick McKinnon, who is the guy behind him, has 1 carry on the year, 4 total touches. I don't see much work going to McKinnon at all. Do you like Daryl Williams to be like the workhorse for the Chiefs at the moment?
Yep, we can only go by previous the previous ability and the previous workload, and it looks like that's exactly who it's going to be.
I like to look at how much the team is willing to put them on the field, and
so sad about
McKinnon saw 29% of snaps last week.
It's so sad about Clyde Edwards. Well, McKinnon is generally the more explosive, in space, passing back, third down guy.
Yeah.
They'll still have him there. But I think goal line carries and regular short yards will all go to Williams, like you mentioned.
Yeah, Edwards-Helaire has really been coming into form this year.
Mm-hmm.
What you had hoped to see on a regular basis.
He was looking good.
Yep.
And so, of course, he got injured.
So, Christian McCaffrey. Yeah. CMC was practicing last week. It came down to a game-time decision. Ultimately, he did not play. This week was basically his originally targeted return time. So I think that he'll return this week. They play the Vikings. He did practice again today. Remember, he did practice all last week, and they didn't decide to play him.
Yeah.
So if he does go, he's going to get his normal workload. That seems to always happen with Christian McCaffrey. As soon as he comes back, boom, he's right in there as the RB1, getting a full workload. It's nice to see. It's nice to have guys that you don't have to question whether or not you start them right away. If he doesn't play, roll out Chuba Hubbard for one more game. Keep an eye.
Chuba. Sean would
my bad.
reprimand
Chuba.
you. It's hard to imagine that it's Chuba.
His parents, I think it was either on TV or we said it last week. His parents missed a golden opportunity to name him Chuba Hubbard.
Well, it's crazy. I mean, I just saw an article the other day. The names people are naming their babies are crazy. Some of them are named Maybelline. Some of them are named Lucifer.
Yeah.
Like they said, 14 babies in the United States right now are named Lucifer, and since 2017, and we're like, oh, you guys just want the apocalypse to occur. Here we go. But maybe she's born with it. Maybe she's Maybelline. I guess they're mishearing the commercial, something like that. Not sure. That said,
are you saying that they shouldn't be born with it?
This is no. Lady Gaga.
Okay, so as always, keep an eye on the inactives ahead of game time before making your final decision with Christian McCaffrey. It's a noon game, so you'll have plenty of other options if he's not going to play.
He has the coach there has more recently said that he'll be a game time decision next week already. Over the past couple hours.
So implying, okay.
But it's ridiculous that somebody on Wednesday would say this guy's going to be a game time decision on Sunday. That is just coach speak and means nothing.
That is super.
What he wants to do is have the teams not know who to game plan for. That's all. I think I agree with exactly what you said. The odds are that CMC does play, and he just doesn't want people to know that he's getting healthier.
Fair enough.
But it's just sad, isn't it?
Yeah. So Chris Carson missed week 5 with a neck injury. He did avoid landing on the IR list, so that means he's probably going to be back soon. He did not practice today, Wednesday the 13th, but Pete Carroll said the plan is for him to return to practice tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Since Russell Wilson's out for a while, it seems like maybe they're going to lean on the running backs a little bit more. If Carson can't go, it's going to be Alex Collins for another week. He had 15 carries last week on Thursday night. This week, he plays the Steelers on Sunday night. The Steelers, as far as points against to running backs, are pretty good. The 4th fewest points allowed to opposing running backs. So the strength of Seattle right now is probably their running game.
Especially with Geno Smith under center. And the strength of the Steelers' defense is their run defense. So they're going to force Geno Smith to pass the ball. Another reason to start the Seattle wide receivers. But that's something that we already went over. Or the Pittsburgh defense, depending on your perspective.
Ooh. They are, I think, highly ranked this week.
I think the Colts, the Rams, and the Steelers are the highest ranked defense this week.
This week, yeah. The Rams, if you were able to pick up the Rams, their next 5 games are against a bunch of cupcakes.
Course. I mean, we're in some leagues, right, where the fab dollars spent on the Rams was like $16 or something.
I paid 6, and I was like, this is kind of high, but I totally want them.
I think I put down $4, and I'm like, never gonna happen.
Yeah, I didn't expect it. What I did expect was $32 on Cadarius Tony to be good, and I was the 4th highest bidder.
Yeah. People want their guys.
Gotta spend those bucks, man.
Yeah.
So, Joe Mixon and Samaje Perine, They split carries in Sunday's game. Mixon had 12, Pirine had 15. Not carries, but total touches, the 12 and 15. However, it was more of a 60-30 snap percentage split, with Pirine being the dominant back there. But that's because Mixon was returning from injury. After the game, Pirine was placed on the COVID list. That sets up Mixon to have a full workload this week. He's practicing. He got out of the game without any setbacks. They play the Lions. If you have Joe Mixon, start him with confidence. I don't have a problem with that. And I also recommend just dropping Samaje Perine for now.
Yeah, I think if there are issues with Mixon as far as injury, etc., Perine looked pretty serviceable considering that the Bengals actually have a better offense these days. But Mixon, and we were together watching the game on Sunday, and it looked like Mixon was fairly healthy, and they were just trying to control his snaps because of what he was coming back from.
He looked just fine in the snaps he got.
So the other guy on that team, his name is Chris Evans. I believe he is.
Does he moonlight as some sort of captain?
I believe
somewhere?
he's some sort of captain.
I got you.
Yeah, some kind of like
of a country,
an American captain.
I got you. Okay.
Yeah. So if he comes
he's a military man.
I mean, he's got a shield and everything. No, I think that
he's got a vibranium helmet.
Chris Evans could be a very deep league snatch for this particular week. But I think in general, Joe Mixon is a probability that's pretty high of taking back over the backfield while Samaje is out.
Yes. Another last running back on our list, Dalvin Cook. He missed the game in Week 5. Alexander Madison proved once again he is the best backup running back in all of fantasy football, even better than whoever winds up playing for Christian McCaffrey. Cook did practice all week last week before being ruled out. So even though he practiced today, it's not a guarantee that he'll start this week. The Vikings are on bye next week, so they may choose to hold him out one more week this week and just keep him out through the bye just to be sure. Mm-hmm. The Vikings play the Panthers, so you could wind up with Dalvin Cook versus Christian McCaffrey, the battle of maybe the two best running backs in the league, or you can wind up with Chuba Hubbard versus Alexander Madison, the battle of two pretty good backup running backs, or some combination of that. As always, watch the waiver wire. I recommend not waking up 4 minutes before kickoff to set your lineups.
I do think that's a quality recommendation. It was your birthday last week.
I'm not saying that I know it from experience. I'm just saying that it's really stressful to check 6 teams' lineups in 4 minutes and just say, screw it, I'm not going to change my survivor pick, and you're sweating the Patriots all game.
Which beer would you like to crack open?
Anyways, let's try that hazy.
To the Needles Hazy Eye PA. New England IPA. It doesn't mean that you're supporting Bill Belichick necessarily. It's just where it came from.
It just means that you love him and the Red Sox.
That's right.
So, we'll move on to wide receivers. Tyree Kill was reported to have a knee injury, and it turned out to be a quad contusion. He's not practicing today on Wednesday. And obviously, just like with the quarterbacks and their finger injuries, a leg injury to a fast receiver like Tyree Kill is just, you cannot play when you have a leg injury that's hobbling you.
Not a speedster like that. Yeah, it's something that needs to be treated seriously, right?
That's my words exactly. So keep an eye on his status throughout the week. If he's not practicing, I don't expect him to play. He is a top-line player, but I don't think he's the kind of guy who's going to play without any sort of practice.
But would you start him if he's going to play?
I would, because Washington is giving up the 4th most points to opposing wide receivers.
Sure.
So if he does not play, Mecole Hardman had 12 targets last week, second highest on the team behind Hill's 13. He should be the main beneficiary. Obviously, Travis Kelce will be involved. Daryl Williams will see plenty of targets. It'll be up to one of the other targets on the team. So last week, there was Kelce, Hardman, and Hill, who all had double-digit targets. And then there were 6 guys with 2 or fewer targets. So it's going to be up to one of them is going to have to step up. I have no idea who it's going to be. I really hope it's Josh Gordon, just for the hype and for the fun and for the memes. It's not going to be Josh Gordon, but
no, it could be. we'll mention him later as well in the broadcast, and I feel like he's kind of in a similar situation as Sammy Watkins always was, where like if the team needs to lean on him, he's a guy that can catch the football, but it's not who they're going to put the game in the hands of.
It's true, but it was so fun seeing him out there on Sunday night because he is huge, and maybe they just don't have a lot of big receivers. They have Kelsey, but I feel like he's the size of Travis Kelsey, but he probably runs faster than him.
Yeah, their
maybe
receivers,
not quite as wide, but he's as tall as Kelsey.
Their receivers without Watkins are all just nimble and fast. They're not big. They're not possession receivers.
Yeah.
Yep. So Kenny Gallaudet, maybe let's talk about our token Giants entry into this
There must
position.
be a Giants entry on every single position. I heard a stat during the game as I was driving home. 7 of the 11 starting like week 1 offensive starters for the Giants are injured now. It's a ridiculous stat. You know, it was after Saquon went out, after Daniel Jones went out. Kenny Gallaudet is now injured as well. He suffered a hyperextended knee. He's finally warming up on the team. He had a good week last week, but he's expected to miss at least week 6. He is going to be on IR. As we talked about him earlier, Cadarius Tony is kind of the new hotness on the team. Sterling Shepard and Darius Slayton could be back. That's going to muddle the target share a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But Daniel Jones had his best game as a pro in terms of passing. He threw for over 400 yards 2 weeks ago. And it was in large part because Kadarius Toney had 189 yards from scrimmage. Or no, that was this week, his 189 yards.
That was this week.
But last week he had like 10 receptions or something like that.
Are you talking about Tony?
Yeah.
He's had 2 good weeks.
Yeah.
Breaking out this week somewhat officially, but the previous week also having quite a few receptions. That's true. And for Daniel Jones anyway, again, I'll talk about him later, but I feel like the game script has so much to do with his success, especially Saquon Barkley. And if there is no Saquon Barkley, it's going to be a huge problem for him because there's no reason for, in general, the defense to stack the box on every down.
That's true. That's very true.
But yeah, your points are valid.
But they'll have negative game script because we're playing the Rams.
Yeah, and that's going to be even tougher. Daniel Jones is going to be have his helmet just full of dirt and grass because Aaron Donald will be all up in his face.
Don't worry, they have field turf. Anyways, Juju Smith-Schuster, unfortunately, has probably played his last game as a Steeler. You know an injury is serious when the team immediately signs whatever free agent is on the top of the pile. This time it was Anthony Miller. So Juju had shoulder surgery. We did see was it a tweet or an Instagram post or a Snapchat or whatever of him from the hospital bed. And he's going to miss the remainder of 2021. Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool will continue to operate as the 1-2 on that offense. Juju was not really contributing much this year and is not fantasy relevant this year. This doesn't change very much in my opinion. But he's a big name that is gone down, and I don't think there's any sort of replacement that will come up. So not a lot of change there.
Well, James Washington is actually a very good receiver who's been looking for his chance, who was...
I hope so. He's buried on my dynasty teams. Let's bring him up a little.
He was very upset earlier in the year because they have 3 guys that are playing every snap, so he had no opportunities. I think James Washington, as a Steelers wide receiver, could be a WR2 somewhere, where on the Steelers he was a WR4. And I am a Steelers fan, but as Jason will also agree to, the wide receivers on the Steelers have never been an issue of theirs. They have always taken up a squad of guys and coached them up to a super high level. So I think James Washington can be a good wide receiver to fill in for Juju, but his the things that James does are not the same things that Juju did. They won't be the same player, but he could be a player that does end up getting maybe close to fantasy productive games. I don't necessarily think that he's someone you're going to want to start, but from an NFL perspective, that's the guy that's going to fill Juju's shoes.
All right. On the Titans, we got A.J. Brown and Julio Jones. So A.J. Brown returned last week. He was on the field for 64% of snaps. He didn't have any setbacks. He led the team in targets. He should have his normal 80+% of offensive snaps coming up next week. Julio missed his second straight game last week. It was a hamstring injury. It was a soft tissue injury, as they refer to it. It's the same kind of injury that Julio has had his whole career. It's the kind of crap that keeps him out for an unknown number of games going into it all the time. It's always been an annoyance when you have Julio Jones on your team.
It's the nails in his foot that are just acting up.
That sucks. So he's practicing today. He might be back. I'm not enthusiastic about him starting immediately once he returns. This is definitely not some sort of Christian McCaffrey situation. For right now, the team is all Derrick Henry. There's not enough production to start 2 wide receivers anyways. Ryan Tannehill just doesn't have to throw the ball much because they've got Derrick Henry doing all of the work. They're going to keep riding him. I can't imagine them doing anything else. So A.J. Brown would be the only one worth starting. When Julio returns, give him a week or two to sort of get back in the flow of things before you throw him back in the lineup. Unfortunately, this seems like the situation where everybody who was down on Julio was probably mostly right as far as what they predicted. It's a bummer. I've always been a big Julio Jones fan. I've always thought that he was...
Well, you're not wrong. It's just you have an older receiver that changes a team that was injured, that is injured. How much can you expect, right?
Yeah, it's a bummer.
What everyone wanted was for Tannehill to have 2 A.J. Browns, just always on the field.
Yes.
And Geno Smith's gone, doesn't matter. Have 2 Julio Jones.
Yes. And now what I want is another drink, so we're gonna do that. You go grab yourself a drink. We're gonna have our own.
Listen to that bass. That's a
good bass line.
Good bass. For anybody that digs the music, I am in the process of opening up a Spotify channel where you can download and stream some of that stuff.
Oh, very cool.
Appreciate it if you dig it. It is some of my first...
You can send Dave money and we'll send you the MP3s.
You can always send me money. It doesn't have to be about the music.
But we'll send you the MP3s no matter what if you send us money.
Why are you getting involved in this?
I'm just helping you here, bro. Can I be your hype man?
No, I don't need a middleman, I don't think, for this transaction.
I didn't ask for a cut.
Okay, so...
If you do well, I do well. That's all that matters.
So here's some quick player trends that I'd like to bring up. And we always go over the trends for regular programming. I'm sure we will again in a week or two. What's great is looking at the past 3 games and seeing how players have done specifically. In this case, this week we have a running back, wide receiver, and a tight end. So I'm going to go over these guys and ask you, Jason, what your opinion is on them.
Okay.
So first we have Michael Carter. Michael Carter, of course, a rookie that was drafted by the Jets. In week 3, he scored 3.9, and all these fantasy points are in half PPR scoring. 3.9 points. Week 4, he had 9.9, and week 5, he had 13.3. Carter has now become a consistent flex option. He's averaged over 10 carries and 3 targets per game over the last 4 weeks, and he's trending up with the yardage gained each week. He's also scored a touchdown in both of his last 2 matchups. And yes, it's the Jets, I understand. But in this time of injuries that we just went over, where we have a segment that's 45 minutes long about injuries, surely you understand that in this 18-week season, there's going to be even more injuries. So it's important to have depth guys and to grab them before they're taken. Now, he is owned in quite a few leagues, a large percentage. I believe in Flea Flicker, which is where we have most of our leagues, he's owned in 79 or 76% of those, at least from what I checked earlier today.
76. Your memory is accurate.
But it's good to have that dependable guy on lock manning the bench or the flex spot, so I like Michael for that. And after the Jets' Week 6 bye, they face New England and Cincinnati. They are not teams that are very They're not teams that are letting a million yardage. They're not teams that are letting a whole lot of points go through, but they are middling teams, right? Middle of the road defenses, whereas they're allowing 16.4 and 17.2 points per game to opposing fantasy running backs. And right now, when you're talking about the Jets, when Michael Carter runs for most of those possessions, most of those snaps, then he's going to get most of those points. I think that you're going to expect between 8 and 14 points for Michael Carter in both of those games. And that's a great guy to have on your bench as someone to slot in when all these injuries occur.
You know, one thing I noticed is that his trend up includes how many snaps he's in for the game, his offensive snap percentage, and there's a lot of room for growth there. Still, he topped out at 52%.
Yeah.
If he's a guy that they trust more and more, then he can get up in that 70% range. He's going to have a ton of production and be a solid RB2.
Right, because there's two other guys that are on that team that are also being used right now, but you'll find in looking at the statistics that they're not being used as much. With this consistency that we see in the targets and the snap percentage and the carries leads us to believe that Michael Carter will, as some experts, including myself, said at the beginning of the year, be the guy at the end of the season, as long as he's not one of the injured, which is always rough. Let's talk about Robert Woods, and a bit of a rough subject for me, but that's okay. Week 3, 5.3 points. Week 4, 12.8 points. And Week 5, 21 points. Again,
this
in half
week I was all over the under on his player props on FanDuel. The wrong week to jump in on that.
Well, we've been right about a lot of things so far this season. I've been keeping track, and I like to be right about things, but you can't be right about all things. Admittedly, we've been down on Robert Woods after it looked like he and the Rams offense were just on different paths.
Yes.
Right? And it's after Woods expressed his frustration to Coach Sean McVay. Sean McVay said, "We need to get him some more opportunities, and that starts with me." And I thought that was coach speak, Jason. And sometimes coach speak is coach speak, and sometimes coach speak is honesty. And in this case, it was actual honesty.
It's like misdirection, right?
Yeah. So we have to respect the trends. What we're seeing here means that Kupp and Woods are much more likely to both have 10 to 15 point games in half PPR going forward than one of them going off for a tremendous amount and the other one not getting very much. So
he was in for 99% of offensive snaps this week.
So as we saw with Kupp early in the season, he put up points, 26 points per game on average over the first 3 weeks. I don't think we're going to see that with Woods also involved like he is. That's good for the Rams, bad for your fantasy production for these guys. But I do still think that Stafford, even though I almost picked him as a trending down quarterback, when you're trending down, it's over 20 points still. It means you're not trending down.
You're just coming back to earth.
Right. So I think Stafford will be just fine. I just think that the points we saw from Kupp that made him basically like the number 3 overall wide receiver right now, they're going to come a little bit down to earth, and Woods will raise up a little bit. I think both those guys
kind of even out just a bit.
Yeah, I think both those guys are deserving of these 10 to 15 point games, and no longer the 26 or the 20 that we've seen in the past for Kupp.
They've got so many weapons on that offense, and they're really unlikely, in my opinion, to rely on the same one week after week.
Yeah.
There's 5 guys, I think, including Van Jefferson, Tyler Higbee, Darrell Henderson, who can really blow up at any given time.
Sure. Good point. Last guy, tight end, Hunter Henry. Week 3, he had 6.1 points. Week 4, 11.2. Week 5, 16.5. Henry has seen his targets and his yards per reception trending up over the past 3 weeks. That's an important stat, yards per reception. It means for the routes that he's running, what kind of yardage is he actually getting for those passing plays. And he's become one of the preferred targets of Mac Jones and the New England Patriots offense. Now, when we first started the season, we saw Geno Smith from Tennessee and Hunter Henry both get grabbed up by New England and Belichick. Mm-hmm. And we thought to ourselves, maybe it'll be a Rob Gronkowski, Aaron Hernandez kind of offense where they send both of them out all the time. But if you look at
which one's the terrible person and which one's the party animal?
I don't know. I would rather.
Let's not put that evil on any of them.
Yeah, come on, Ricky Bobby. So I would much rather look at them as which of those right now is getting the passing plays and going out for routes, and which one is playing the blocker. And when you look at that, you see Janu is definitely the guy that is doing more blocking. Hunter Henry is the guy that has more percentage of snaps running passing routes. So I don't see why that would change. Looking at it as a trend, which it is currently, red zone targets, back-to-back touchdowns against the Bucs and Texans, and next week going up against the 24th against tight ends ranked defense in the Dallas Cowboys, we should see Henry continue to provide excellent and stable fantasy production for team managers. So if you're able to get Hunter Henry, I think he is a every week play at this point. I mean, look at the guys that are the wide receivers there, right? They have quality receivers, but they are not wide receiver ones. They are wide receiver 2s or 3s in Kendrick Bourne and Jacoby Myers. Well, both are getting a ton of targets, and they're receiving the ball.
There's nobody around we're throwing
But these are not guys that are able to break free of tackles and score touchdowns. These are guys that are possession receivers that are going 3 yards and getting tackled.
Right. Hunter Henry is 6'5", 250. You can just throw it up to him, and he's going to come down with it most of the time.
He's going to score the touchdown,
yeah,
as he has.
And Geno Smith is 6'3", 248, which is more stout, even though they're both enormous human beings. That's why I think he's used in the blocking a little bit more.
So Belichick looks at him and says, "You're blocking."
Yeah, and you know what? If your coach is Bill Belichick, you say yes, sir.
Well, regardless of the situation, we can only look and see what stats are presented to us. And these trends are important, and I encourage everyone else to look at those trends as well. But any comments about those particular players or anybody else that you might have to bring up that is trending?
That is trending. I did not look into the trends necessarily.
Sure. We'll continue to
I really like
this
where your mind is on Michael Carter. Robert Woods, I think, is, as I said, it's going to be some variable production. He certainly got the squeaky wheel treatment this week because he had 14 targets. He didn't have anywhere close to that earlier in the season.
Yeah.
I mean, his previous high-end targets was 9, and mostly it was 4, 9, 6, 6, and then 14. So he definitely got the squeaky wheel treatment this week. It's not going to happen every week like that. You're going to see more Cooper Kupp and Van Jefferson. You're going to have games where they just run the ball because that's all they need to do. This week they're playing the Giants. They may only need to throw the ball 25 times.
I mean, I think Sean McVay will allow the game script to dictate what happens. But
he's a smart coach.
I do think that Robert Woods is not going to have any more games where he has 2 points.
Right. You have to coach the game as it is presented to you, not demand that your grand plan is forced upon it. That is perhaps a lesson that Matt Nagy could learn. and many other coaches, really, let's be honest.
Yep.
It's just that, being here in Chicago, we're sort of forced to examine Matt Nagy on a regular basis.
Yep.
So, where do you want to go next?
Well, there's only one way to go next.
To the next thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
If that's all right with you.
Well, I didn't know if you wanted to do questions now or later.
What I would prefer that we do is open up that beer, perhaps.
There's a little bit more of this. Why don't you finish that real quick while we talk about the cut list?
All right. Why don't you go ahead?
Okay. So at the top of the J cut list, we've got Derek Carr, who is owned in 78% of leagues. Dave wrote up all the cut lists. Not to bring that up as a demand, just to give you credit for coming up with these names. Owned in 78% of leagues, that's a bold move. And I appreciate that because he's trending down over the last 3 weeks. And as you said, a trend down doesn't mean that you're getting down to 20 points. Derek Carr has lost his mojo.
Well, he went from 20,
he's lost his head coach.
22 to 15 to 8.
Yes, that is a proper trend down.
Yeah, exactly.
Trevor Lawrence owned in 76% of leagues, saved by rushing touchdowns over the past 2 weeks. He's only thrown 3 passing TDs since September 19th.
How do you like that for a stat?
Again, what do these guys both have in common? Coaches with controversy. They are distracted. They are not playing well at the moment. They both have talent, but you don't need them on your team because in a 1 quarterback league, you should have one guy that's performing. maybe one backup if the bye week is coming, and that's it.
I am specifically talking about with this cut list. I think we should say probably a 12-team league redraft one quarterback. Like I'm not talking about 14, 16-team leagues. I'm not talking about super flex.
Both
I'm
of
not talking
those
about
guys
dynasty.
need to be kept in super flex leagues, obviously.
Yeah, obviously.
Every starting quarterback should be owned in a super flex league.
And dynasty is the same way. Both of those guys have value. But in a redraft league...
Oh, yeah. Don't ever cut Trevor Lawrence the first year in a dynasty league.
But in a redraft league, yeah. I mean, they're goners.
At running back, you've got Trey Sermon, owned in 76% of leagues. Elijah Mitchell, who was drafted after him, so it may have led to a little confusion early on, is clearly the lead back. They've got Jeff Wilson, who's going to come back. They've got...
But they've said that Jeff
not
Wilson...
Raheem Mostert anymore, right?
They've said that Jeff Wilson won't come back until, like, mid-November. So, like, we have a lot of time.
Oh, no, they do have Raheem Mostert. I was thinking of Matt Breida is now gone. Yeah, there's a trove of running backs on that team. Right now, it's just the rookies, and it's really just Elijah Mitchell. They're on bye this week, and the quarterback situation is muddy.
You know Mostert is the thing that started all this.
I know. Because he's really good and gets injured all the time.
Yeah, he's not going to come back. He's done for the season.
Oh, he is?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is what started the whole thing. Like, it was going to be... The 49ers and the Ravens had good running back rosters that were, like, loaded with depth. And then all of them got injured.
And then a nuclear bomb went off.
Exactly.
So, speaking of the Ravens, you got Tyson Williams, 47% owned. You know, he was owned in way more leagues, and it sounds like people are listening to you. So you can say it.
I told you so at the beginning of the season.
There you go.
Everybody thought this is going to be the guy. It isn't the guy. They're not going to use him. They want the veterans. He's not good in situations in which you have to protect the quarterback. Multiple times I mentioned how he did horrible things that lost the game.
Yeah.
Do you think that I'm the only one that notices that? John Harbaugh is the coach of that team.
Pretty sure John Harbaugh is paid to notice these things. He's paid millions of dollars to notice.
Tyson Williams is not going to be the lead running back of the Ravens this year, if ever, because he lost multiple games for the Ravens.
So, the next two guys...
Get over it.
Those takes are too hot for me. You please take them.
Too hot?
I agree with one of them. I don't agree with the other.
Oh, because you have them on your teams. Got it.
No, I don't.
So, Devin Singletary is the first one, 83% owned. I marked both these as hot takes. So the cut list is generally guys that have done badly or poorly or trended down for multiple games. Singletary is splitting currently all of the carries with Moss, but he doesn't get the goal line carries. He's not getting the touchdowns. And he doesn't have substantially more targets than Moss does. It looks to me like Moss is trending to be the guy to take over that role, or at least to the point where Devin Singletary is no longer relevant in 10 or 12 team leagues. And
so this is the take I agree with you. The trend here is offensive snap percentage. Starting in week 1, 75, 66, 43, 44. Last week, only 26%.
Look at that. That's a lot of trends.
In a game where they were dominating and they could have used just running backs to run out the clock, he only got 26% of snaps.
That sucks.
Yeah, that's not a good one.
Yet he's still owned in 83% of leagues. He's sitting on benches doing nothing. And these are the kind of guys
gathering dust.
These are the kind of guys that need to be taken off your team. The second guy, which apparently you don't agree with, is Miles Sanders, 94% owned. So he's almost in every single league. I don't think he's producing well in this Eagles offense. I don't like this Eagles offense. And he has a consistent snap count. He is out there all the time, but he is not producing as a fantasy relevant player. And so what I'm telling you is if they're not going to use him, why are you keeping them? Why are you keeping him on your bench? Or why are you putting him in your starting lineup?
Please don't put him in your starting lineup. But I say keep him on your bench.
Why? For what reason?
Because he's literally trending up in snap percentage. If a guy is on the field a lot...
How's that working for his fantasy points?
What we want are guys who are given the opportunity.
Not if he's not doing anything.
It's got to turn around for him.
Why do you think...
Got to give it a little more time
Why?
to turn around.
Why? Is he due?
You've got to give it more time to turn around.
Look, I'm saying it's a hot take. I say if he continues...
Saying he's due sounds like you're an idiot. Saying that he'll regress to the mean sounds a little smarter, even though it's the same damn thing.
Yeah.
I think that you'll see
How
some
many weeks do you need
regression
to
back
have Miles
to the
Sanders score 6 points for you to cut him from your team?
I claimed him as a free agent this week because I was like, he's not a free agent yet.
How many weeks do you need him to score lower than is playable for you to cut him from his team? Just let me know. 2 more weeks?
I will do 2 to 3 more weeks.
I will. Well, let's return to this in 2 to 3 more weeks.
Yeah, okay.
Now, if Miles Sanders trends back up, then I will say that was my mistake. But I will tell you, it's not like Kenneth Gainwell is doing way better. It's just that the Eagles have no idea what they're doing, and they are not utilizing any of their players in the way that they should. And why is that a trend that should change? It's not. It won't.
Yeah.
So you tell me why Miles Sanders will suddenly be better in the next 2 weeks.
I'm saying because he's still got all of the opportunity, and he has the pedigree of an actual good player.
So what's going to change?
The Eagles' offense needs to figure out, their ass from a hole in the ground.
That's true.
And if they can figure that out, then they're going to play a little bit better, or decently better. Look, he's a guy with a 4.9 yards per attempt career average when he carries the ball. He has almost 3 catches per game.
Do you want to know why the running backs aren't doing well in the Eagles?
Yes, I do.
Because their quarterback is Jalen Hurts.
Fair enough.
100%.
So they play Tampa, Las Vegas, and Detroit coming up.
It will not change.
So do not start him this week because Tampa is fierce against the running back. Now that means that Miles Sanders is going to have 20 points.
Yeah.
But
clearly we're both wrong, and he's going to score 3 touchdowns.
Although Myles Gaskin had a ton of points against the Tampa Bay, But that's fantasy points and not real production.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on.
All right, wide receivers. Josh Gordon, 38% owned. He caught a pass, and the crowd cheered. Time to move on. Next flavor of the week.
Believe in the hype, Dave. Believe in the hype.
You mentioned earlier that you want Josh Gordon to do well. Well, that's great. A lot of people do. Doesn't mean it'll happen.
I just want it. I don't think it's going to happen.
I think he'll continue to get 1 to 3 passes per week and is similar to Sammy Watkins' role, and that's great. And I'm glad he's back in the league, and it's a good story, but he's no longer Josh Gordon.
Yeah.
He is way bigger than the rest of the receivers, though.
Yeah.
Devonte Parker, 71% owned. He has hamstring and shoulder injuries. He was saved by a touchdown in week 4, but his low yardage in every single week has limited any upside he's had so far. I dare you to start Devonte Parker.
No. No. I dropped Devonte Parker before I saw him on the cut list.
Yes. Brandon Ayuk, 78% owned. 78%. Kittle on IR could possibly give Ayuk another shot, but how many shots are you willing to give Ayuk?
If Trey Lance is throwing him the ball, 0. I cut Ayuk this week as well.
Cole Beasley, 69% owned, 420-69, has the emergence of Knox in this
Where's
offense.
Gronk when you need him?
Has the emergence of Dawson Knox in this offense and Emmanuel Sanders in this offense caused Beasley to slip back under the radar? I say yes.
Yes, and he'll blame it on some grand conspiracy, but it's just the fact that he's not as good of a football player as he thinks he is, and he's not as good of a football player as the other football players on his team.
Tight ends. Robert Tanyan, 79% owned. Why? He's averaging 1 to 2 receptions per week. He's only had 1 week where he had any fantasy points worth starting. He has no consistent fantasy value. Anyone associated with Aaron Rodgers is just an immediate start. That's why people still have Marquez Valdez-Scantling on their team, which has no fantasy value whatsoever.
Look, Robert Tanyan had 3 touchdowns in a primetime game last year, once.
That's why.
And that has earned him so much name recognition.
He's got a lot of street
that
cred.
he doesn't deserve.
He's got all the cred.
I mean, I say deserve. Like
is he on one of your teams?
No.
Yeah. Cut him, guys. Cut him.
Yeah.
Cut him.
Yeah.
Geno Smith, we talked about him earlier, 65% owned still. According to the numbers, according to the trends, Hunter Henry is the trusted tight end asset in the passing game going forward for the Patriots. Geno Smith is simply not a guy you want to have on your team. Do you want a cool tight end prospect that you can have? How about Mo Alley Cox or something like?
No, we're not going with Mo Alley Cox either.
Dan Arnold on the Jaguars.
Yes.
Like take someone that's not Geno Smith because he has already
How about
demonstrated.
Donovan Peoples-Jones?
No.
Okay.
He's tried to be a thing every year, never been a thing. Did you just pick him up somewhere?
No.
I love his name, Donovan Peoples-Jones. Oh my goodness.
How about
He's not a tight end either.
Transaction.
He's
No,
wide
he's not. I'm
receiver.
thinking of Ricky Seals-Jones.
Oh, yeah. He was a high-end tight end prospect this week, a waiver wire claim that was pretty high.
Tell me, Dave, why is everybody adding Zach Ertz? Why is he the second most added tight end this week?
You don't know the reason?
No. Is Goddard hurt?
Have you not been paying attention?
Look, there's 32 teams. I might miss a guy or two here or there.
I'll explain it to you and everyone else. So Dallas Goddard recently tested positive for COVID.
Okay.
And because he tested positive for COVID, I believe even though he was vaccinated, and according to the NFL rules, he can do 2 back-to-back 24-hour apart tests that are negative, he just tested positive like on Monday. And so
they play on Thursday.
The odds of him being able to do that are next to nil, which means that Zach Ertz will be the only tight end that suits up for that match. And as we all know, when there is only Zach Ertz or there is only Dallas Goddard, those guys do well.
There's so many times when that happens, when 2 guys makes it muddy, when one of them is out, the other guy flourishes.
That's the reason.
Yeah. If you want other names, David Njoku, obviously Dawson Knox if he's still available, but he should be owned in most leagues now. Mike Gesicki even. Look for a Dalton Schultz. Last week, we did have a bet. Dalton Schultz versus Dawson Knox. Dave, you won. Congratulations.
To the
It's
beer.
2 in a row.
But Schultz still had a good game too. Didn't he have like 12 points or 13 points or something? It just Knox had like 20 something.
Schultz was 8 targets, 6 catches, 79 yards. If he would have had a touchdown, he would have been very close to Knox. But Knox broke the 100-yard mark.
We both had
a touchdown.
Games.
Yeah, we did not pick crappy tight ends. Look, I mean, Schultz is in double-digit points 3 weeks in a row.
I have to say, I think
this is like he's lower points each week, but it's not a trend down because he's still above 10, and that's good for a tight end.
I think for some of these guys, the wide receivers, the tight ends, what we've been talking about them, mentioning them, trying to get them to be put on teams week after week. I think we've been doing a pretty good job. I know that I've been talking about Dawson Knox for the last 3 weeks.
I think we had a good hit with our sleepers last week.
Yeah, I think so too.
I was really proud of myself for hitting Cadarius Tony. He actually did finish in the top 10. He was the only. We had good performances out of some of our guys. He was the only one that actually finished in the top 10. When you set that as the bar, I was like, we're not going to hit that. That's ridiculous.
No, that's the whole point. The whole point is upside. So good for you. That's fantastic. We have some audience questions. Do you want to read through those before we
if anybody in the chat room has questions as well, please chime in, and we'll do our best to get to those. But
these are questions from Twitter, and let's get those. And
so at Zeems 12,080, I'm sure that's not how he puts it, but he is the AJ Brown owner in a PPR league, and he is panicking. Who are some receivers he should try to target and try to trade for? So the best pickups this week at wide receiver, obviously, you have Cadarius Tony. You got St. Brown in Detroit. Emmanuel Sanders is playing really well in Buffalo. Would you recommend James Washington as a pickup, or is that more of like a deep league sort of thing?
No, he's talking about trading.
I'm first going with guys that he might be able to find on the wire, and then we can talk about trades. As far as trades go, you generally want to target guys who are big names, but they are not performing at the moment. Guys at wide receiver that pop into my head on that list, maybe a Keenan Allen or Chris Godwin.
What? Those guys are not going to trade those receivers for him.
Okay, well then you need to kind of drop down to like the.
Well, maybe they would. Maybe you're right. So I think it's unusual, or maybe it's not unusual.
Brandon Cooks, maybe.
It's interesting that people always try. People always panic, right? This is
He literally said he's panicking.
This is a thing that is very common. Is you have someone that is starting at a lower average points per game, or they're injured or whatever, and there's a panic saying, well, that's not ever going to work out. Yeah, like I'm just going to be bad forever, right? And I think it is just so crazy to think that. But it's because I'm in a couple of dynasty leagues. So what I would say is you have to pick someone who's a buy low candidate, but your candidate is a buy low candidate. So it's like, so AJ Brown, if I'm going to trade for him from the other perspective, I'm going to want someone that is on the same level or higher. Otherwise, why would I trade? So I would be looking for someone who is either doing really well or someone who is also buy low. So like maybe you could get like an AJ Brown, Stephon Diggs trade. But if you did that, would you really be helping yourself? Because then you'll just panic when you have Stephon Diggs, right?
It's true.
I would say it's possible that you could trade lower than what you should based on how someone is doing now and the name that you have. So maybe you could trade for like a Terry McLaurin because his name is not nearly as high as A.J. Brown. But Terry McLaurin has been doing way better than A.J. Brown has.
He certainly has.
Maybe someone who's more into the name. And in that same vein, DeAndre Hopkins.
Amari Cooper.
Those are other ones that come to mind.
Yeah.
But what I would say to you is that all those players are not as good as A.J. Brown. And that if you would simply wait a week or two while A.J. Brown gets healthy, he will be better than all those players.
I totally am on your wavelength with hold on A.J. Brown. If you want to trade for a receiver with other assets on your team, go for it.
Yep.
But for now, hold with the A.J. Brown talk. At Dynasty Boyd asks, who do you prefer in Dynasty, Laviska Shenault or Juju Smith-Schuster? Laviska Shenault. He's younger. He's not injured for the year. Juju will probably go to another team and have like a prove it type of contract, so he may have a good year next year. But for now, it's Laviska Shenault all the way. If he can develop some good chemistry with his rookie quarterback, it could be years of production for him.
So I actually like Juju because Shenault signed a 4-year contract, of course, with the Jaguars.
Okay.
And I think Juju has an injury that's not going to affect him greatly going forward. I think he'll be able to recover fully from that.
And he's very young still as well.
And so I like Juju. But there's no reason for that. I just think that Juju is a more proven player than Shenault.
Some reasons.
I think I never use.
Just let me poke at you and continue. I'm not being serious.
I simply think that Juju's a more proven go and get it guy than Shenault is.
I mean, if Juju can come close to his second year, he had 111 catches, 1,426 yards, 7 touchdowns. Like that, he must have been a top 5 guy that year.
But as you can hear from Jason and myself, it's a difficult question. I mean, Shenault is a younger guy. He's on a team that is not doing so well right now, but could do well later. Whereas Juju is an injured guy at the end of his rookie contract. In fact, on the prove it contract, it's not like he's not going to go away. Like Juju's going to be in this league for years. But whether or not he does well depends entirely on the landing spot.
Yeah. Okay. So Troy in the chat room asks, Deontay Johnson or Chris Godwin, or he could play both and sit Sam Darnold. So that sounds like a super flex kind of question.
Do you mean this particular week?
Yes. So Deontay Johnson is playing on Sunday night against Seattle. Chris Godwin is playing tomorrow night against the Eagles. And Sam Darnold is playing against the Vikings.
You're saying Darnold or?
It's a super flex. So the question is, should he start Godwin or Johnson or both of them and sit Darnold?
Okay.
So, in my opinion, you start Sam Darnold and you start Deontay Johnson. The Steelers are now down a wide receiver. Deontay is already like the de facto number 1 on that team. Chris Godwin has a high floor but a low ceiling this year in Tampa. So I would go with Deontay Johnson and carry on with Sam Darnold.
Yep.
All right. His follow-up question, he needs help beating someone named Dave. I'm guessing it's you. So Tyler Lockett or Myles Gaskin? This is one of those fun ones where you can tell him who to start. You can pick who you're going to play against, Dave. Who would you rather play against? Tyler Lockett or Myles Gaskin?
It's an interesting week, right? I think Tyler Lockett is by far the guy with the highest upside, but when you put Geno Smith in at quarterback, I don't trust any of that. And so I would think that the higher floor is from Gaskin and the higher ceiling is from Lockett.
Yeah, as long as Gaskin doesn't have a 2 carries for 3 yards kind of game.
So, in my opinion, I would start Lockett if it was my team because he has the upside and doesn't have the downside that Gaskin
So
has.
you would rather play against Gaskin?
This is not about me.
I know. Okay.
Take me away from this entirely.
I just having fun here.
Yeah, if I'm actually playing this guy that you're talking about, I mean, again, it doesn't really matter. But if I'm playing against him, then I would prefer Gaskin, who has a lower floor.
Okay.
I think that the right choice is Lockett.
Right.
Is that what you think?
Your advice is clear. It's okay. I agree with you.
Does it depend if you're chasing, because Gaskin had such a good game.
Lockett's so good at getting open, and that's what Geno Smith needs.
But Geno Smith is not a good quarterback.
No, he's not.
But the difference between Gaskin and Lockett is that you know that Lockett will at least get a couple.
What team was Geno Smith on? He was on the Jets. The Jets are just always bad, so he can be on a better team now. Okay, a couple more questions that we can go through. At the Legend Joey asks, if they both play, do I start Tony or Shepard, PPR? Tony. I've been saying it all night. I think that Cadarius Tony is the man. Who do you think, Dave? Sterling Shepard or Cadarius Tony?
Again, Sterling Shepard has a much higher floor. He's been fantastic over the past couple years at PPR. He's been getting, like 8-10 points per game no matter what. Whereas Tony has had games that are nothing. And he seems reckless and he was just ejected from a game. Like there's some high
volatility.
There's volatility here.
That's true.
But if you're chasing upside, clearly it's Kadarius Tony.
So Shepard is averaging 6 receptions per game.
Yeah, exactly.
It's pretty good.
Well, one is a guy who doesn't buck the trends, who doesn't try to get ejected or punch anybody in the helmet. The other guy is a guy who thinks he's the best receiver in football, who's a rookie. So there you go.
He's the second coming of Odell.
I think Tony, his floor is 0, and his ceiling is 35. I think Shepard, his floor is
10,
7 or 8, and his ceiling is 16.
I see.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So consistency versus upside. I would, in this early in the season, play Kadarius Tony.
Yeah, go for the upside. At Jameson's.
Ooh, Jameson.
With a Y and a Z. He has 2 to play. Who are we sitting? And PPR. Gaskin, Higgins, and Moss.
Mm-hmm.
So you got 2 running backs to choose from. And T. Higgins, who is playing. The Bengals play the Lions. That's a juicy matchup.
Juicy.
The Dolphins play the Jaguars. Another juicy matchup. And the Bills, doesn't matter who they play, they're going to score a ton of points. They play the Titans on Monday night. So, one of them to sit. I'm probably sitting Myles Gaskin in this situation. Just because the Dolphins have the weakest offense of anybody here.
I agree. Play Higgins and Moss.
All right.
But again, Gaskin had a really great last week. It doesn't have any bearing on his future.
His last 2 weeks were like his floor and his ceiling.
Yeah.
So, and it's all about, as we say, how much they're on the field. In week 4, he was only in for 23% of snaps. Last week, he was in for 69. Nice percentage of snaps. Last question, I believe, unless anybody wants to drop one in on us. Would you hold on to Kittle? This is from Matt Cochran. Would you hold on to Kittle while he's out or drop him for another tight end? In his case, he's got Hunter Henry, who he just picked up.
We just talked about how much we love Hunter Henry, but
would you drop George Kittle?
But I would never drop George Kittle.
Okay.
Not in a situation
You're
in
not
which
going to find him on the J Cut list anytime soon.
not in a situation in which he will come back after the 3 weeks. The only reason he's on the IR is because he will come back in 3 weeks. The only reason that that's occurring is because they changed the rules for the IR. I think a lot of people playing fantasy forget that the rules have been changed, and someone's on IR, you're used to him being out for 7 weeks.
Yeah.
If you had Waller or Kelsey on IR, would you drop them?
Hell no.
Nor will you drop Kittle. They are top 3 tight end prospects.
I agree. Don't drop George Kittle.
But Hunter Henry was a good pickup, so good job there.
Yeah, that's a great replacement.
Yeah.
And you never know. You might be able to flex them both.
Congrats.
If you need. So that was a great show that we did tonight. If I do say so myself, I think that you all should subscribe to us on YouTube and that you should give us a 5-star rating wherever you did find this podcast. Make sure you subscribe wherever you did find this podcast. Go to Twitter and follow us at Drink5. Go to all the rest of the social media sites. We have a strong social media presence, even if I stubbornly refuse to participate in most of it.
Why do you keep saying that? That's not a part of this. You don't have to keep inserting your opinion about social media. We love you guys. No matter where you follow us, it's fantastic.
Yes,
and
thank
you know what? What's important here is that we all succeed, win our championships,
and refill our glasses.
and
'cause they're
refill our
empty.
glasses. That is 100% true.
Yeah.
So let's get a refill.
Okay.
And thank you very much. Hi Miranda. Shout out to Miranda. Thanks everyone for joining us in the chat room today. Cheers, guys. And drink 5.
Drink 5, everybody.